listening to the Video Game and Nerd Trivia Podcast with Tony D. Video Game and Nerd Trivia Podcast, your episodic dose of trivia covering all things video games and nerdy. Now, here's your host, Tony D.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Video Game and Nerd Trivia Podcast, where we quiz you on all things video game and nerdy. This podcast is a production of the No Time for Time Travel podcast. So each episode will be focused on a video game or nerd topic, and how it works is I'll ask you a question, give you 5 seconds of silence, then tell you the answer. There will be 3 rounds of questions as always, and today's topic will be the Nintendo 64. I had one growing up. I had a few games for it. They were really expensive games. I definitely preferred the pricing of the PlayStation 1 games. Alright, so let's begin. Round 1. Question 1. What was the first Mario game on the Nintendo 64? That would be Super Mario 64. Question 2. What was the first Zelda game released on the N64? That would be Zelda Ocarina of Time. Question 3. What game was released on the N64 that was regarded as one of the worst superhero video games of all time? That would be Superman 64. You flew around and collected rings, which is kind of weird for Superman. But yeah, that's why it was pretty bad. And I could go on, but I won't. I'll move on. Question number 4. What is the name of the N64 game where you pilot a flying vehicle and your team consists of anthropomorphic creatures in space? That would be Star Fox 64. Question 5. Hudson Soft released a classic game reimagined for the N64. In this game, explosives are the primary use of weaponry. What is this game? This is Bomberman 64. Question 6. What does 64 mean in Nintendo 64? This stood for the 64-bit system, which was its processing unit. Question 7. What was the name of the attachment that allowed the controller to shake during gameplay? This was the Rumble Pack. Question 8. Which space game was the first game to use the Rumble Pack and also included when you purchased this game? This was Star Fox 64. Question 9. What type of media did the video games come on for the N64? These were cartridges, and also contributing to the expensive cost of cartridges, like I said earlier, which is why I preferred PlayStation costs because the CDs were cheaper. Question 10. Name one of the 2 primary competitors to the N64 during its lifespan. This was either the Sega Saturn or the Sony PlayStation, which I mentioned a few times. Alright, so let's move on to round 2. Round 2, question 1. What was the name of the system after N64 that Nintendo released? This was the GameCube. Question 2. What was the best-selling game of all time for the N64? This was Super Mario 64. Question 3. What was the letter that the N64 controllers resembled? They look like letter M's. Question 4. What game on the N64 was arguably a pioneer in local couch play FPS death matches? This would be GoldenEye 007. Question 5. Which video game caused Nintendo to spell sports glove because the party activities cause a lot of blisters on their hands? This was Mario Party, so people actually got blisters and hand injuries like punctures and burns, so it required Nintendo to sell sports gloves with it. Question 6. Who voiced Mario in Mario 64 and also had a cameo in the recent Super Mario movie by Illumination? This is Charles Martinet. Question 7. What game on the N64 had the cast of Mario duking it out on the road with weapons, kinda like Twisted Metal? This would be Mario Kart 64. Question 8. What was the name of the Rare developed FPS game following a protagonist named Joanna of the Carrington Institute? This is Perfect Dark. Question 9. What was the name of the N64 game that had you racing on the water and doing tricks in your jet ski? This is Wave Race 64. And question 10. What was Nintendo's first foray into the fighting game genre that debuted on the N64 and had a cast of Nintendo characters? This is Super Smash Bros. Alright, let's head into round 3. Question 1. What was the name of the floppy disk drive peripheral for the N64 that did not get a US release? This was the 64DD. Question 2. What was the capacity of the floppy disk in the Japanese peripheral? This was 64 megabytes. Question 3. Following the ban of video game consoles in China, Nintendo and Weiyan worked together on developing a controller and console all-in-one unit to be released in China. What was the name of this device? This was the IQ Player. Question 4. What was the final official N64 game ever made? This was Tony Hawk Pro Skater in 2002. Question 5. What was the code name of the N64 under development? It had 2 code names, so either one works. Project Reality and later Ultra 64. Question 6. Why did Nintendo change the code name of Ultra 64 to just Nintendo 64 at launch? Konami held a trademark for Ultra games. Question 7. How many games were launched with the N64 in the US? There were 2. It was Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wings 64. Number 8. In the TV commercial for Super Smash Bros., where some of the main characters are humans dressed in full character suits, holding hands and prancing through a field, what was the name of the song that was playing in the background? This was Happy Together by the Turtles. Question 9. Harrison Electronics released a device that allowed people to back up their N64 cartridges onto zip disks. Remember that, zip disks? What was the name of this device? This was Mr. Backup Z64. And finally, question 10. What was the name of the add-on that doubled the RAM on the N64 from 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes? This was the Nintendo 64 expansion pack. Alright, lots of nostalgia for me writing this quiz, and hopefully you had some too, and hope you enjoyed that episode about the Nintendo 64. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you like our show, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere else you are listening to this. It will help us reach more people who may enjoy this kind of stuff. You can always send us a message on Twitter at VGNT Podcast or our website at vgntpodcast.com. But until next time, trivia on!